Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I am Joey Francis, your life, love, and relationship coach. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to talk to you about something quiet, something subtle, something that doesn't scream, doesn't break, doesn't explode, something that doesn't hurt you all at once. It hurts you slowly, softly, silently. It's comfort, not the kind that feels like home, not the kind that comes from alignment, not the kind that grows with you. I'm talking about the comfort that keeps you small, the comfort that convinces you to stay where you don't belong, the comfort that whispers, don't move, don't change, don't risk anything, the comfort that feels warm on the outside but hollow on the inside. Because some of you listening right now, you're not in love. You're just comfortable, and you've known it for a long, long time. You felt it in your chest. You felt it in the silence between conversations. You felt it in the way your body tenses when you imagine your future. You felt it in the way you avoid certain thoughts because you're scared of what they'll reveal. You felt it in the way you tell yourself, it's fine. It's not bad. It's okay. Fine is not a life. Fine is not a future. Fine is not a reason to stay. Fine is the slowest form of self-betrayal. In fact, I think in one of my previous episodes, I even explained that the definition of fine, and funny enough, fine never means fine. And I want you to sit with that for a moment, not rush past it. Not distract yourself. Just sit with it. Because the truth is simple. You can lie to your friends. You can lie to your partner. You can lie to your family. But the thing is, you can't lie to yourself forever. Eventually, the truth catches up because it always does. And when it does, it doesn't knock. It doesn't announce itself. It just shows up quietly. And it asks you a question you can't avoid anymore. Is this really your life? There's a moment in every relationship where the noise fades, where the excitement settles, where the distractions fall away. And all you're left with is the truth. Not the truth you tell other people, not the truth you post online, not the truth you rehearse in your head to make yourself feel better. I'm talking about that truth that sits in your chest when the room is quiet and there's nowhere left to hide. The truth that whispers, this isn't it. And most people hear that whispers, but almost nobody listens to it because listening to it means admitting something you don't want to admit. It means acknowledging the life you're building might not be the life you actually want. It means facing the possibility that you've been choosing safety over alignment. It means looking at the person you're with and realizing you didn't choose them out of love. You chose them out of fear or convenience. But fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of running out of time, fear of not finding better, fear. It's a beautiful architect. It builds fast, it builds efficiently, it builds convincingly, but it never builds something you can live in forever. Fear builds temporary structures that look stable until the first storm hits. And then you realize you've been living in a house that was never meant to last. Some of you listening right now are living in that house. You know it. You feel it. You felt it for a long time, but you keep painting the walls. You keep rearranging the furniture. You keep telling yourself that if you just try harder, if you just wait longer, if you just ignore the cracks, maybe the house will fix itself. But houses don't fix themselves, and neither do relationships. There's a moment, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, where you look at your partner and you feel a kind of emptiness you can't explain. Not anger, not sadness, not disappointment, just emptiness. Like something's missing. A quiet, hollow space where connection should be. And you try to fill it with routine, with plans, with distractions, with we're fine. But the emptiness stays. Because emptiness doesn't go away just because you pretend it's not there. It waits, it lingers, it grows, and one day it becomes impossible to ignore. That's the moment most people finally break. Not because something dramatic happened, not because someone cheated or someone lied, but because the truth finally got louder than the comfort. And when that happens, everything changes. You can't unhear the truth. You can't unknow it. You can't unfeel it. Once the truth shows up, it stays. And it starts asking questions, the ones you don't want to answer. Questions like, is this really your person? Is this really your life? Is this really enough? And the hardest one of all, if you were brave, what would you choose? Most people never answer that question because answering it means confronting the life you've built on top of a feeling you've ignored. And that is terrifying. But you know what's even more terrifying? Waking up 10 years from now with a life that doesn't feel like yours, with a partner you never truly chose, wondering how you got there. You got there because you listened to fear instead of truth. And the truth, it never goes away. It just waits, sits, waits. And finally, the moment you're ready to hear it, pops up. There's a story I need to tell you. One I've probably said before, or you've heard it, or maybe even lived it. It's about a woman I knew in her late 20s. Someone who wanted a family more than anything. Not in a desperate way, in a human way. In a, this is the life I pictured myself way, thinking about it from when she was a child. But underneath that dream was fear, a quiet fear. The kind that doesn't scream, the kind that whispers. Fear of being alone. Fear of running out of time. Fear of being the last one without a ring. Fear of watching everyone else move forward while she stayed still. And fear is patient. Fear waits. Fear watches. Fear knows exactly when to speak. So time goes on and she meets a good guy, a genuinely good guy, kind, stable, predictable, safe. And safety can feel a lot like love when you're tired of being afraid. They start dating. Time passes. And one day, she tells me she thinks that he's going to propose. But she also tells me something else, something small, something she almost didn't say. She said, Joey, something's missing. Something feels off. So obviously I ask her, like, what's up? What's wrong? What do you think that's missing? And she says to me, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. Now that sentence is the beginning of so many lives people were never meant to live. Because when you can't name the feeling, you convince yourself it's not real. You convince yourself you're overthinking. You convince yourself you're being dramatic. You convince yourself that waiting more might be asking for too much and you may not deserve it. So, time goes on. He eventually asks her to marry him. And obviously she says yes. She gets married. She has the kids she's always dreamed of. She builds the life she thought she was supposed to build. And for a while it works. At least that's what it looked like. But the truth doesn't disappear just because you bury it under milestones. It waits, it lingers, it sits in the corner of your life like a shadow you pretend not to see. Years later, my phone rings late at night, and it was her. And the thing is that she never calls me that late. I answered. and her voice is quiet, shaken, almost like she's afraid of the words she's about to say. Obviously, I ask her, hey, is everything okay? And she says, Joey, remember that conversation we had before I got married? And I was like, yeah. She says, that feeling is back. That same feeling she had before she got married. That same feeling she ignored. The same feeling she hoped would disappear once she had the life she wanted. She described it, and what she said stayed with me forever since. She said, it's like when you go on vacation and you know you forgot something, but you don't know what it is. That feeling, that quiet nagging, that something is missing feeling. And honestly, I had nothing to say, because what do you say to someone who built an entire life on top of a feeling they ignored? She didn't choose her person. She chose what was safe. She chose what was available. She chose what fit the timeline. She chose the picture instead of the partner. She focused on the wrong thing. And now she's living with the consequences of a decision she made out of fear instead of alignment. And here's the part most people don't want to hear. Some of you listening right now are living her story. You feel the same vacation feeling, that same quiet ache, that same sense that something is missing, but you can't name it. And you keep telling yourself, if you just stay long enough, if you just try hard enough, if you just wait, maybe the feeling will go away. But it won't, because it's not the feeling, it's the truth. And the truth doesn't disappear just because you're scared of it. It waits, it watches, it whispers, and eventually it demands to be heard. Now, if this is your life, if this is what you chose, and I mean, in the case of this story, for the most part, she's happy. He's a wonderful man, wonderful father, wonderful provider. What do? This is the bed you made. This is the bed you sleep in. This is the choice that you need to live with now. And for a lot of people, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But there is something I need you to understand. Something most people never learn until it's too late. People don't stay in the wrong relationship because they're weak. They stay because the mind is designed to protect you from pain, even if that protection costs you your life. Your brain is not built for happiness. It was built for survival. And survival loves routine. Survival loves predictability. Survival loves anything that feels familiar, even if the familiar thing is slowly killing you. So when you're in a relationship that's fine, your brain clings to it. It holds on like a life raft in the middle of the ocean. Not because it's the right raft, not because it's the safest raft, but because it's the raft you're already on. And letting someone go means facing the water, facing the unknown, facing the possibility that you might drift before something better comes along. And your brain hates that. It hates that uncertainty. It hates that unhappiness. So it convinces you to stay. It whispers things like, hey, listen, don't ruin a good thing. You're lucky to have someone. Everyone settles eventually. Or maybe this is just what love feels like. But those aren't truths. Those are defense mechanisms. Those are survival strategies. Those are the lies you tell yourself to avoid the pain of admitting you're not where you belong. And the longer you stay, the more your brain adapts. It builds routines. It builds habits. It builds a life around something that was never meant to be permanent. And once you build a life around something, it becomes harder to leave. Not because it's right, but because it's familiar. Because it's comfortable. Because it's easy. Familiarity is powerful. It's intoxicating. It's comforting. But it's also dangerous. Because it can make you believe that something is love when it's really just repetition. Some of you listening right now aren't in relationships. You're in routines. You're in patterns. You're in cycles. You're in agreements you never consciously made. You wake up next to someone not because you chose them, but because you've gotten used to them. And there's a difference, a big one, a life-changing one. Choosing someone is active. It's intentional. It's alive. Getting used to someone is passive. It's automatic. It's numb. And numbness, the quietest kind of heartbreak, doesn't scream, it doesn't shatter, it doesn't collapse. It's just fades slowly, quietly, until one day you look at your life and realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. You don't remember the last time you felt excited. You don't remember the last time you felt seen. You don't remember the last time you felt alive. You've just been surviving, not living. And survival feels safe until you remember you're not meant to just survive. You're meant to grow. You're meant to expand. You're meant to feel something that shakes you awake. But when you can't feel that, when you're wrapped in comfort that keeps you small, comfort is warm, comfort is soft, comfort is familiar, but comfort is also the reason you stay in relationships that don't grow you. Comfort is the reason you ignore the truth. Comfort is the reason you silence your intuition. Comfort is the reason you settle. What a powerful word. And settling is the slowest way to break your own heart. Not all at once, not dramatically, not loudly, but quietly, softly, in the background of your everyday life. Until one day you wake up and you've realized you've been living a life that doesn't feel like yours. And the worst part, you are the one who built it, brick by brick, choice by choice, fear by fear, not because you wanted it, but because you were too afraid to want more. There's a moment that happens in every relationship that isn't aligned. A moment people don't talk about, a moment you don't post about, a moment you don't even admit to yourself until much, much later. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, and it's not explosive. It's quiet, almost invisible, almost forgettable, but it changes everything. It's the moment you look at the person you're with and you realize you're not choosing them anymore. You're just staying. Not because you're in love, not because you're inspired, not because you're growing, but because leaving feels harder than staying. And that moment doesn't feel like heartbreak. It feels like a sigh, a long, tired, soul-deep exhale you didn't even know you were holding in. It feels like your body is telling the truth that your mind has been avoiding. It feels like something inside you quietly stepping back and whispering, "This isn't it." And you try to ignore it. You try to drown it out. You try to convince yourself it's just a phase. It's just stress, just a bad week. But the thing is, deep down inside, you know that moment wasn't random. You know it wasn't temporary. You know it wasn't a glitch. It was clarity, raw, unfiltered clarity. And clarity is terrifying when it threatens the life you've built around this comfort. So you push it down, you bury it, you pretend it didn't happen. You tell yourself, they're a good person, they treat me well, they're stable, they're consistent, they're not doing anything wrong. And all of that might be true, but none of it means that they're your person. Good doesn't equal aligned. Stable doesn't equal connected. Consistent doesn't equal chosen. Some of you are with someone who checks every box except the one that matters. They don't feel like home. Not the safe kind of home. Not the I can breathe around you home. Not the I see my future in your eyes home. I'm talking about the home that feels like truth. The home that feels like alignment. The home that feels like your soul recognizes theirs. Some of you have never felt that. Some of you felt it once and lost it. Some of you felt it and walked away from it because it scared you. And some of you are pretending you don't need it. And you know what? That's fine if that's your choice. But understand that these are the choices that you're making and that you have to live with. Because I believe you do. We all do. Because you can build a life with someone who is good enough. You can build a routine, you can build a family, you can build a future that looks perfect on paper. And if you're satisfied with that, I mean, that's fantastic. That's great. But you can't build a soul level connection with someone who isn't aligned with you. And that misalignment, it doesn't necessarily show up in fights or arguments. Sometimes it shows up in the silence, in the pauses, in the space between words. It shows up when you're sitting next to them and you feel alone. It shows up when you imagine your future and something inside you goes quiet. It shows up when you realize you're editing yourself to keep the peace. It shows up when you feel like a visitor in your own life. And once you feel that, once you notice it, once you acknowledge it, you can't unfeel it. You can't unknow it. You can't pretend it's not there. That moment is the beginning of the truth. And the truth is the beginning of change. Even if you're not ready for it, even if you're terrified, even if you know what comes next. Because the truth doesn't need you to be ready. It needs you to stop running. There's a part of this conversation almost nobody talks about. Not the settling, not the comfort, not the fear. I'm talking about the identity loss that happens when you stay with the wrong person. Because when you're in a relationship that doesn't fit, you don't just lose time. You lose yourself, piece by piece, choice by choice, silence by silence. You stop laughing the way you used to. You stop dreaming the way you used to. You stop showing up as the person you were becoming before the relationship slowed you down. And the worst part, you don't even notice it happening. Identity doesn't disappear in a moment. It dissolves, it erodes, it phases. You wake up one day and realize you've become a quieter version of yourself, a safer version, a smaller version. Not because someone forced you to shrink, but because you kept shrinking to make the relationship feel bigger than it actually was. And that's the part that breaks people in a way they don't want to talk about. In fact, we create excuses. We call it sometimes growing up, even though it's far from that. It's not the relationship ending that hurts the most. It's realizing you abandoned yourself long before the relationship ended. You stopped choosing the things you loved. You stopped expressing the parts of you that felt too much. You stopped asking for the life you actually wanted, not because you didn't want it anymore, but because you didn't want to disturb the fragile peace you built with the wrong person. And that peace, it wasn't peace. It was self-abandonment disguised as maturity. People think that heartbreak comes from losing someone, but the deepest heartbreak comes from losing the version of yourself you were supposed to become. The version of you that would have existed if you had chosen alignment instead of fear. The version of you that would grow instead of shrunk. The version of you that would have loved without negotiating your own needs. The version of you that would have built a life like your own. That's the grief nobody prepares you for. Not the grief of losing a partner, the grief of losing yourself. And if you're listening to this and you feel that grief in your chest, even if you can't name it, even if you've been trying to ignore it, that is your truth. Not the relationship, not the routine, not the comfort. The grief is the truth. And the grief doesn't show up unless something inside you already died. There's a part of staying too long that people never admit out loud. Not because they're ashamed, not because they don't even realize it's happening to them. They definitely do. It's resentment. Not the loud kind, not the explosive kind, not the kind that shows up in a fight or slammed doors or raised voices. I'm talking about the quiet resentment, the kind that grows in the dark, the kind that builds in silence, the kind that forms every time you swallow a truth you were too afraid to say. Resentment doesn't start with anger. It starts with self-betrayal. Every time you say, it's fine. is when resentment grows. Every time you pretend you're satisfied when you're actually starving, resentment grows. Every time you shrink yourself to keep the peace, it grows. And the cruel part, you don't resent them, not at first. You resent yourself. You resent the version of you that keeps choosing comfort over honesty. You resent the part of you that keeps abandoning your needs to protect someone else's feelings. You resent the silence you keep forcing yourself into. And that self-resentment eventually spills outward. It always does. Because you can only betray yourself for so long before your body starts keeping score. You start feeling irritated over things that never used to bother you. You start feeling distant even when they're right next to you. You start feeling heavy in moments that should feel light. Not because they changed you, but because you did. You became someone who carries unspoken truths like weights in your chest. And here's the part that hits the hardest. Resentment is not a sign that the relationship is broken. Resentment is a sign that you broke your own boundaries to get a relationship or keep the relationship alive. You crossed your own lines. You ignored your own needs. You silenced your own voice. You abandoned your own intuition. And now you're paying the price for the choices you made. People think resentment is anger. It's not. Resentment is grief. Grief for the conversations you never had. Grief for the needs you never got and never expressed. Grief for the boundaries you never held. Grief for the version of you that kept disappearing to make the relationship happen or easier. And the longer you stayed, the heavier that grief became. Until one day, you wake up and you just don't resent the relationship. You resent the life you built around it. You resent the years you lost. You resent the dreams you shelved. You resent the person you became to keep the peace. And the resentment doesn't go away. It doesn't fade. It doesn't resolve itself. It sits in your chest like a truth you're too scared to touch. And it whispers, this isn't who you were supposed to be. Not because you failed, not because you're broken, but because you stayed in a place that requires you to abandon yourself. And self-abandonment always ends the same way, with a version of you you don't recognize staring back at you in the mirror. There's one thing I want to leave with you, one truth that sits beneath everything we've talked about. No one can choose your life for you. Not your partner, not your friends, not your family, not society, and definitely not your fear. At some point, you have to decide whether you're going to keep living that life that happened to you or the life you wanted to live. And that choice is always quiet, always personal, and always uncomfortable. It doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't come with certainty. It doesn't come with applause. It comes in a moment when you're alone with yourself and you finally admit what you've known for a long time. That something inside you has been asking for more, not louder, just longer. And you've run out of ways to pretend you don't hear it. That's the moment everything changes, not because you suddenly know what to do, but because you finally stop lying to yourself. And once you stop lying to yourself, you can't go back. You can't unhear the truth. You can't unknow what you feel. You can't unsee the life you were supposed to be living. So if you've listened to this and something inside you is stirring, even a little, that might be your signal. Not to leave, not to stay, not to blow up your life. Just to be honest with yourself for the first time in a long time. Because honesty is the beginning of alignment, and alignment's the beginning of everything. You don't need a plan. You don't need certainty. You don't need permission. You just need to stop abandoning yourself. The rest unfolds from there. If anything in this episode hit you, good. It was supposed to. Not to hurt you, not to shame you, but to wake you up, because the life you want isn't waiting for the perfect moment. It's waiting for you to stop abandoning yourself. And nobody can do that part for you. Not your partner, not your friends, not your family, not even me. And I mean, I'm pretty good. You're the only one who knows how and knows when you've had enough. You're the only one who knows when you're done lying to yourself. You're the only one who knows when it's time to stop surviving and start living. So take whatever truth surfaced for you today, and don't run from it this time. Sit with it. Let it bother you. Let it change you, because the moment you stop avoiding your truth is the moment your real life begins. There's probably so much more that I can say about this. There's a lot of you out there that are probably dating somebody because you don't want to be alone, because of the time of year, because of your past. You can't handle being alone. And I hope you listen to this and that this episode has made you think that what you want can be out there, but I can't decide that for you. You need to decide that for yourself. And if you want to talk about it, you know where to reach me. Go to joeyfrancis.com. That's joeyfrances.com. And there you can send me an email. You can send me a message. You can also buy my books. And I know I mention this all the time, but the book, The Logic of Me, a guided journal for self-discovery, might be what you need. It might help you find your truths, provided that you are honest and transparent when you decide to do it. And I hope that you do, because it definitely will help one way or another. And this was a reminder that the door out of the life you settled for has been unlocked the whole time. You just have to walk through it. Till next time.